Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, and joined with me today is Dr. JC Bonia, a wonderful host from New York. Hey, JC.
Hey, brother. How are you? Hi, hello, everybody. Great spring vibes. Favorite part of the year when winter is receding and spring is coming. So, super hyped. All things AI, gigantic couple of weeks. So, excited to see you so we can comment and catch up. All spring, all AI, full of energy, caffeinated. What can I tell you? I'm ready to go, artist. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, we're recording on a Friday morning, and as we drop these episodes in over the next couple of weeks, one of the things that we can't promise is that there will probably be something new out there, where it is.
What is up with this? I mean, we're talking about from recording to actual you audience benefiting. We're talking about a week, maybe 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and we're nervous that this is going to be outdated. What kind of world have we designed for ourselves, huh?
It's incredible. It's incredible. So I'm really excited about it. There's
Yeah.
just a lot happening in the market right now. Spring is where a lot of these AI announcements come out. There's just so many of them. But
Yep.
what we're going to focus on today is on this new paradigm that we've seen happening over the last year. We've talked a lot about this before, but we're going to talk about voice AI agents and the way that they're changing and how we're interacting with AI today. We've seen these AI agents be prolific in all of our chat applications. We are seeing them and we're interacting with them more and more. For example, ChatGPT has a voice mode, Gemini has the voice mode, Perplexity, and every one of the general AI agents out there, AI assistants, has a voice mode. We're also seeing it quite a bit in customer service now. When you're calling in
Hmm.
to restaurants or when you're calling in to a lot of different places, you're getting this AI agents and AI voice agents. So voice is becoming an interface to interact with AI that is getting better and better and better. And today, one of the things I wanted to highlight, which is breaking the internet a little bit, is this new groundbreaking voice model called Sesame, which is ultra realistic AI speech compared to some of the prior versions, maybe a month ago prior versions, so to speak. So it's real-time voice. It's amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about it. And then we're going to talk more like breaking that down in some use cases for higher education, right? How we can kind of position and how we're going to talk about this multimodal, interactions with students and how that fits into our CRM and how it integrates into that whole student experience and how these voice agents now, how they're going to affect call centers and how they're going to affect kind of the inbound phone numbers that the schools have, the outbound mechanisms that we're interacting with, and then how they're going to affect the student experience just by engaging with an agent, voice agent versus real human person. So sounds exciting, JC? What do you think?
Of course, sounds exciting. The departure from a voice actor that I think a lot of the machinery that has powered these voice interfaces, it sounds sophisticated, but at the end of the day, the work behind the scenes was gigantic. And for example, many of us who, think about the Siri voice or the Alexa voice and whatnot, that body of work, it's changed in our faces, right? And it changed in the past 2 years. But there was a legacy of, I would say, the technology that we're interacting in was very obvious. And one of the things that we unpack in this conversation today is how this technology progresses so much that it starts giving you a totally different experience. And this is kind of where my takeaway is as we unpack this is I really enjoyed not feeling that I was talking to a computer, a machine, right? And I think it's going to be really interesting how we unpack the technology evolution of voice AIs that is becoming so real and human-like, and it's being welcome in many, 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 many places around the world. So let's do this, my friend.
All right. So voice AIs today is not just a gimmick anymore, right? It's really becoming the default way we're interacting with our AI.
We called it, you and I think when we said prompts are dead. And
Right.
my gosh, I remember getting a lot of heat. Like, what do you mean? And there was all this prompt engineering courses and things like that. And yeah, it's in a way this what you just said. It feels like gratifying because we saw it and it was fun. So yeah, we called it.
That's right. So one thing about Sesame, obviously there is, like we say, there's a lot of chatbots. All of the chatbots that we're using today, that's becoming the default interaction with a lot of them, right? We saw Alexa Plus being announced last week, and we can talk more about that a little bit more. But Siri has been with us. Obviously, Apple has kind of failed us in terms of giving us a very, very smart. That's a whole episode
That's
within
a whole
itself.
episode.
But what gets us really excited is that how Sesame really captured everybody's attention over these past 2 weeks, because it's very, very human sounding. It's also the training hours. It's trained with 1 million+ hours or of speech before, and it's also open source. So the company or the team is open sourcing it on their MIT. So what that means is now it's going to be available in a lot of different places, and it's not locked behind like an OpenAI or maybe a Google large model that you have to use them. So that's what really gets me excited. So now voice can be an interface that can be actually added to a lot of these different places. And the really cool thing about it is that people can't tell it's AI. It's got this new architecture, and there's really excited. We're really excited. Here's the deal. Voice before sounded a little robotic. It got a little bit better over the last year. It sounded a little bit more human, but you still could tell we're crossing that uncanny valley of speech. So the line between AI and human is getting super blurry today.
In artists, and that was my earlier point. Not only technologically that has been achieved now, and I think we should definitely do a demo so people can experience these artists.
Yeah, let's do it.
But it is welcome. So as you prep us for a demo here, it was welcome to hear like, am I talking to a machine or not? And I've done experiments with family. Like, what do you think of this surrounding like survey of five? Oh, this is very, very nice as opposed to scary. Like, what am I talking to? So let's check it out. Can we do a demo?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to play a couple of samples in here, and then we're actually going to go in and talk to it itself. So I'm going to play kind of some samples that they have kind of put together around paralinguistics.
Shh, Lucy. Shh. We mustn't wake your baby brother, Tom whispered as they tiptoed past the nursery.
Ta-da! Well, what do you think? This is the best, right?
As a gesture of camaraderie, the Spanish torero invited his rival, Leo the Monster, to a tapas bar, where they enjoyed jamón ibérico and de noche.
During Rio de Janeiro's famous Carnaval do Brasil, the streets pulsated with the rhythms of samba.
Nice to meet you, Louie.
Oh, hi. Actually, it's Lewis.
Sorry about that, Lewis. Oh, have you tried having an apricot with it?
Oh, I usually say it apricot.
Of course, no problem. Apricot it is.
So sometimes when we deal with this AIs, like we try to pronounce foreign words in English or differently, and there's very
Story of my
much
life. Story of my
exactly.
life.
So,
You know what's interesting? My name, right? Like the way you would pronounce it phonetically, right?
yeah,
If you have a French accent, Jean, right? You do it specifically. If you do my name in English, will be like Jean, right? Giancarlo. And then the Spanish version is Giancarlo, right? Dude, he nailed those. And yesterday I did it with my wife that has a Turkish first name also. So the foreign words, it's coming also really lightly because it's able to bring the phonetic nuance that is regionalized, right?
that's right. That's right. And that's really cool, right? Let's take another one, a conversation, for example, with multiple speakers that it's doing.
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. What about you?
I'm great. So happy to be speaking to you.
Me too. This is some cool stuff, huh?
Yeah, I've been reading more about speech generation,
Yeah,
and it really seems like context is important.
definitely.
From that, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a conversation with Sesame. Let's do it. So, JC, what did you think about that?
It's it's always impressive, right? And probably the 20th time I've done one of these, and every time I go back to the same place. How human-like feels, right? The breathing, those kind of mechanisms that we use to cope with thinking, right, right, those type of things. But the insecurity that it all sometimes brought, the compassion, empathy, as you mentioned it, right, or like when it switches to like the confidence, that range, it's probably what makes it the most human, in my opinion, because in a given day, I doubt, I'm confident, I am confusing people, I'm confusing myself, in all that is common as a form of speech. And I think that's the range that I really think Sesame has cracked.
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty cool. I think one of the things that people are going to notice as we move things forward over the next few months, or even 6 months or so, the human-like notion that you're going to feel with this agents here as well, right? So let's move on to kind of comparing this voice tech approaches and technologies, right? I want to get a little geeky right now, so hopefully you can stick around with me, right? So if we think about it, there is what Sesame as the model has been built a little bit differently, meaning that it's a voice model, voice to voice model, right? So it's trained on voice, it understands voice, and it produces voice. So it's both voice and text underneath. So it doesn't have to do a translation. So it understands the intonations, it can produce that, it hears your voice loud, low. So that's the whole beautiful thing about it. It's also very small and can live in. But the way we've been doing kind of this voice pipelines today is a mechanism that we call, the approach is we provide text, or sorry, we rather provide speech. So if somebody talks into it, so speech to text, or STT, which that's the pipeline. So we translate that speech. There is a voice encoder on the other side. So one of these models takes your speech, it turns that into text. That text gets fed into a large language model, or it goes through the workflow of, very similar to how you're typing something in chat. It kind of retrieves information from backend databases or whatever. It gives you text back. And then that text now goes through another process called TTS, or text to speech. And that's the pipeline, right? So it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then there is also the native real voice, just like we talked, like Sesame, or models that like OpenAI real time voice, like that's another one. Gemini is another one. So you have this native voice models that can produce voice, and they can also understand voice. But today, most of the solutions are getting built on this pipeline of speech to text and then text to speech back. Pros and cons, right? So latency is a little bit higher on those. The accuracy is actually really, it's good, but sometimes it's not, because it understands a word differently. It doesn't know how to pronounce it, just like you said. And then there's no emotional context there. So OpenAI real-time voice approach and Sesame's end-to-end strategy is actually the future. So this pipeline of translating into text and then text to speech is around right now. It's stable. It's gotten to the point where it's very, very fast, and a lot of the solutions out there in the market, especially for higher education and some of the other agents, are based on that. That's why you hear a little bit of a pause, what's happening, and sometimes the pronunciation is not okay. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Artis, you know what's interesting on that framework of the speech to text, text to speech, back and forth, and how latency and computational resources can be told. There's a really interesting human component for us, you, me, and many others who have multilingual backgrounds. If you remember, and everyone who's speaking a second language, it's very tiring at the beginning, because when you're not fluent, you're translating in your brain. I heard something in English, I need to translate it in Spanish. I understand what it means, and I put it back in English, and your brain has done that. So you're exhausted at the end of the day, because in a way you're thinking twice. I remember really clearly through my ESL years, when you dream in English, that tells you that your subjective is already translated, so you kind of do it automatically, right? So that's exactly what is happening here with real-time voice processing. You skip that step and you have become fluent, and it's a really, really fun translation of how that resource, in this case the brain, translates to accuracy, latency, and then you get that emotional context. The last thing I can tell you, I think, humanly speaking, the best way to know that you're fluent is when you can tell a joke without translating it, because you understand that emotional context in the language, and that's exactly what is happening here. So as you went through that review, I just remember my ESL year, so a little bit of context there.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting because the whole idea. So it's not what you're saying is it's not just about what's said, but how it's said.
Exactly.
That's where this real time integrated models shine, right?
Totally. And that native aspect of being voice, it's literally what makes it shine, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So when we're thinking about in the market right now, from a model perspective or providers, 11 Labs is one of the companies
It's the
that
standard, right?
the standard. Yeah, and they have these voices. You can produce your own voice in there. You can do dubbing. They have hundreds and maybe even thousands of different voices from all over the world, global voices. One of the things that I do with 11 Labs, which is pretty cool. I don't know if I shared this before, but I had to do it again for this season. Is like my son plays baseball, and his team has every player has a walk up song. And as part of that walk-up song, you say, now batting for whatever the team is, number X, number 99, Noah Kadu. So that's the, you have to say that. But what I do with 11 Labs is I actually, in order to pronounce the last names of all these kids the right way, I have to pronounce it, because if I type it in his text, it's going to butcher it. So I pronounce it. I actually, do it with my voice, and then I can use a dubbing, so somebody else with a very deep voice is like, now batting for. So I spend 5 minutes and do that for the season, and it sounds amazing, right? So anyway, so 11 Labs, if you haven't used it, highly recommend using 11 Labs. But other players out there like OpenAI, we know that OpenAI with 4.0, they use it's Omni, so it's multi-channel, kind of multimodal, and then we actually have adopted that real-time voice for Element here from OpenAI. We also have the traditional text-to-speech and speech-to-text product as well. So we're kind of experimenting with both of those, or we're seeing how that works. One really cool thing that we're seeing voices become more and more important. Llama 4 was just announced this past week that it's going to have voice capabilities as well. So not just text, but Llama 4 will have voice capabilities as well. And then you see startups from all over, right, that are just introducing voice and this really, really cool voice models as well. So there's a lot of competition out there.
And who's leading the way, right? In a way, and I want to remind everybody, you said it takes 5 minutes, right? There's a common script that whether it's 11 Labs or these models will ask you sometimes to read. So you read the 15 words or something like that. It's a very common thing.
Are you talking about voice cloning?
Yeah, right. And then and specifically this aspect of where we're coming today, right, is that you have your ability to, I need you to do this podcast for us, right? And then we can have the whole podcast and it can be read, right? And the only thing that it took was you and I need to read 15 words, and then you put an autoplay, right? And that is the world before Sesame in a way. And one of the exciting things that I started to see with all these startups coming into is that when it comes to speech artists and voice and why they have led the way is that it's really easy for us to type or generate something, now put a script, and it's perfectly imperfect, right? But voice is the most pure way of communication. If there's something I need to tell you, I'm not going to write. I'm going to call you and I need to explain something to you, right? So the fact that we enter this golden age of voice is so exciting because at the end of the day, is the most human way for you and I to engage,
Interact with technology. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And this is why
Exactly.
I'm just delighted that from Llama, the open source world jumps in, 11 Labs, Sesame, that type of advancement. It's just human and it's so welcome. Let's talk about how this thing is built. You want to do a deeper dive on how they're built?
Yeah. So we talked about the models, but it's like, you want some real world, like how do you build voice agents on top of this?
Sure.
And under the hood, you really have to combine these different pieces together. So, like I said before, the voice agent pipeline is the speech to text. It goes to the AI model to reason about, and then text to speech. So that's one way. And then there's the multi-channel trick where you kind of have that come through phone lines, right, through a phone call, and then you come in through a website or maybe the mobile app. But that's one of the main things, and how these are getting built today, right, under the hood. That's more prevalent.
Does your mom send you voice text or text?
She sent me text, and when Siri
Text
tries
text.
to read it, oh man, it's like she sends it to me in Albanian sometimes, and
My
it just butchers it as you're walking or as you're doing something, and I'm like, stop, stop, stop.
I don't, there's a generational thing of sending voice text that I see in my family back home. So it's all voice text, which is a WhatsApp feature.
Oh, but that's right. Yeah, WhatsApp. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point about multi-channel, I just want everybody to remember that there's a whole thing about sending voice messages, recording voice. Like last time you went to a doctor, I don't know if you saw a doctor actually doing voice recording of the notes, writing in that machinery, it's 1990s vibes, but there's a whole multi-channel aspect of voice that is really, really important. And phone lines, telemarketing, I'm excited to see how we take this there, but I know it's half of what it's going to be impacted. Anyway, keep on going, please.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, at the very core of it, right, you need to have an AI that understands, translates that voice that's coming in to some kind of text, or feed it into a reasoning model, into your agent kind of brain, and your agent system. That agent system produces something, a response back, and their response get sent back as voice. So that's the pipeline here. So designing voice agents really means like weaving together the text so it feels seamless, and then you're trying to minimize that delay there as much as possible. So no matter how you dial in, or no matter how you talk to that AI, you need to minimize the delays that are happening so it feels a little bit more natural, like there's a human there. And right now we're getting them sub 1 second kind of delays, which is really, really good. Now, look, let's just move on to like how does this think about, like, what is this voice AI in higher ed? What are the different areas that we can think about it?
Oh man. Last time I got a phone call, you want to join an event or artist? I'm just going back to probably 2000, and I'm seeing this dad who his son and the mom, they're coming to America, and you can see the trauma that they're experiencing. And when I'm speaking to the song to their kid, his eyes light up. He gets it. He's going to be fine. But mom and dad have no clue what I'm saying, because in that voice intervention, which I came to help, it didn't land for them because of the obvious reasons of translation and whatnot. So the two things that come to mind is that, yeah, there's a game of telephone that a lot of schools do it, but the multilingual capabilities of voice are just so perfect for a family decision, which sometimes higher education represents. So, what do you think about use cases here?
Yeah, I mean, so the use cases in higher ed for voice AI are tremendous, right? Think about you just mentioned enrollment support, like enrollment management, like how do you communicate to families in
FAQs, right?
multilingual FAQs? That's a great way. How you dialing in and you're asking questions, 24/7 student services, like that's a big one, right? It's not about chatbots anymore. It's like, what if that person is on driving on the car and they can't type and all these things, or they're calling in to a call center, and then you need to provide answers to them. So that's a really, really interesting mechanism. Or they're going to your website, and rather than typing, having a chatbot, now you have a voice a voice agent that's the same way in there.
It not only access that it's going to be voice activated, but she's double down on 24/7. I don't know the stat, but we all know that there's a student productivity focus on off hours. Somehow, most of students they reach their productivity at really strange hours, whether you are an undergraduate student or a graduate student, and that's where student services are always offline. So now it's not a problem, right? Hey, professor, 3 a.m. in the morning. Is the midterm going to include this thing tomorrow? And the midterm is at 9 in the morning the following day.
Oh,
Classic.
that's right. That's classic. One thing that I get a lot is the idea of picking up a phone call that's an inbound phone call to you, right? As a student or as like I almost never pick up phone calls. And that's the pattern that I see everybody. There's nobody picks up the phone calls. It's very rare that you do that. It's always almost initiated by a user. So the outbound approach, it's a little bit different, but this notion that you have these voice agents are only communicating over a phone line or telephony is really not the way that the world works. So yes, voice is very, very important. The voice agents are going to be here, and it's going to be the way that we communicate with this technology. But the voice agent needs to be in all of the different channels, right? So a voice agent, yes, it can come through a phone line, but it's also can be in the app itself, like the app that in Element we have a voice agent. We have different modalities that you can communicate with, with those agents. And you can communicate via voice, you can communicate via text, you can communicate via, WhatsApp or even chat on the website or email as well. So the modality and the channel are very different. Where we see this being really, really useful is in basically what we saw, that one-on-one chat from the app, or from kind of a context where the AI knows who the person is and how they're going through that conversation. So it's not about telemarketing anymore. It's about how do you provide a human-like interface so students can kind of engage with you in that way. So a friendly AI voice helping you enroll or find financial aid might really be the new normal on campus, right, as we move things forward. But it needs to be integrated deeply on that.
The nature of the query, what you're saying is, look, everybody, start thinking about voice AI beyond telephone intervention that's 24/7, and it's the aspect that I can raise my hand, and it's very human-like. The nature of a query, a question, is that, hey, what's happening tomorrow on campus? And that was actually the question. It happens whenever, and then the answer comes back real time in a totally human-like aspect, and it's in context to what the student is asking about, right? And or the administrator and things of that sort. Today, the world looks like if I can pick up the phone and ask the same question, or I can type. And I think that's one of the things that I want to double down. The nature of the query being voice is the new norm for campuses. I like that. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a kind of this call center and what's happening in call centers. A lot of institutions have staff and have call centers all over that are handling student requests.
Half of the GDP in Costa Rica is call centers,
Really?
Yeah, and we can talk about how this is an industry sector, right? But many of us think of call centers as our Indian human talent picks up the phone and whatnot. But over the past, I would say 10 years or 15 years, that has expanded to offshoring and nearshoring. The concept of nearshoring is I want these call centers to support my HR benefits. So as opposed to calling my HR person at the company, I called a third party call center. And it's a really interesting market, Artist, because it's all about reducing wait times and costs in the countries that have won, like Costa Rica, is because we have good English. I mean, think about that. However, it's the most inefficient thing still, right? Because it's a handoff to a human, right? It's a handoff to a human, just a cheaper human.
Exactly. Just a cheap. And you still have to go through the process of actually getting to that human, because the cost of routing, or the human routing and understanding your problem and then handing it off to another human, it's still very expensive. So the idea of what we are today with press 1 for X, or the IVR nightmare, so to speak, right? Like or press 2 for this. It's like, I don't know. I need to tell you what I need, and then you figure it out. So that's the promise here as well, is that we kind of make the customer experience, more difficult because of that. So that's the promise of how we can. And then, to be honest, I think, with call centers, like if companies are moving to AI call centers, or the AI voice agents, and they're really seeing huge benefits, 30, 50% or calls today are getting handled by AI. So think about Open Table. Someone was telling me the other day that they booked a reservation on Open Table, and they had to call in because it wasn't available online, and it was just an AI that handled the whole transaction. And this is becoming more and more relevant right now. So the interface is voice, but you're not going to a call center. You're actually handling everything, and you don't have to go and kind of try to press 1 and 2 and 3 and figure out all that call tree. So that's really, really important. And again, I would say that having AI figure out how to route you. When we build AI agents, we think about the routing as, what other agent do we hand you off to with the right tools so you can accomplish whatever you're talking about, right? It's a little bit more kind of a fuller system, rather than, oh, a human needs to do this job now.
And Ardis, one of the things you're unpacking there is that with the traditional methods of automation without voice AI, is that you need to bring this routing in a way as a triage, because at the end, right, at the very, very end of the spectrum, there's a human waiting, right? And she can only take one phone call. So this basically massive press 1 for this, press 2 for that, or you go here and then it answers the question, is prescriptive, and there's a ton of interesting technology there. That assumes sequencing comes like first in, first out type of mindset. One of the exciting things about voice AI, it's its parallelism in terms of like multi-thread architecture. And then, as many come in, I can handle as many. It doesn't matter that I have to reroute to another voice agent, things like that. The mindset is now different, right? It's not that, oh, the operator is busy, right? Literally, you have infinite calls
Instant
at once.
connection. That's right.
Instant and infinite, right? So instant and infinite. So it's a really interesting shift in what operationalization could be and improvements in customer experience. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our standard is low. By the way, our standard is very low today when it comes to call centers. Very, very low. This is going to bring up the standard much, much higher.
I agree. And the whole idea that you have to staff a call center for capacity, max capacity, or peak time, and then when it's not peak time, then so you have to do this staffing models, or however that works. It's really incredible, because think about financial aid calls, like inbound calls to schools around financial aid, or other questions that are coming in. We did one of our keynotes around agents and how we think about the student support. And one of the numbers, or one of the facts, is that you can wait up to 2.5 hours in peak time for financial aid information or financial aid office on the school side. On non-peak times, it can be up to an hour or longer for some institutions. So who wants to do that? Who wants to wait all that time to get a human, and then maybe you solve the problem, or maybe you answer the question? Financial aid offices have tried to solve that problem with putting some chatbots on their website, which are, again, just Q&A type of chatbots, but still somebody wants to talk to an agent, or you really need to kind of put these pieces into place. So we see this, just like you said, as a huge, huge success in providing really, really good customer care for those inbound calls and handling those questions.
One story before you wrap us up. As you know, my wife does this really interesting kind of customer intelligence work. So, true story that happens at Goldman Sachs. They moved a portfolio of a credit card to another one. That means that every time you say, now you can use this new credit card, so they send you something, if they don't connect with that person who most likely is going to call, you could be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like the time value of a customer, let's say $50,000. And what this person is saying is, how do I do this transaction? Because they don't want to do it online. The age demographics, it's like older people and whatever. So it literally, they brought every call center that could exist, and they couldn't match the demand that they're gonna get of maybe 100,000 users calling it at once. So you need to basically now change the total strategy based on the capacity of, let's say, 1,000 people picking up the phone, right? Because so that means you estimate that 1,000 people are going to call in. I have 1,000 people picking up the phone. So, but you have, let's say, 100,000 people to send this offer to. So you have to chunk it out. So think about the fascinating aspects that we need to comply with in terms of process and experience, just because we cannot keep up with it. So very, very interesting story, and it really, really happened. So the future is exciting, artists. Very, very exciting.
Oh, you sound very excited, Jesse. Maybe I need Maya in here from Sesame with the Sesame model to sound a little bit more exciting.
No, it's as I said before. I'm a strong believer on what this brings to us in terms of work vibes, customer success vibes, customer experience vibes, productivity, because the nature of how we communicate as humans and what we see out today in this debrief is the evolution of AI voices and how ultra realistic has arrived.
Correct. And that's really where we are today. So, we're at the frontier of this of voice enabled AI right now. But again, with great power comes your responsibility. So we got to use it wisely, right? We got to make sure that we're providing accurate information. We're not using it for spamming people and so on and so forth. So we have to keep an eye out for that. Those rules haven't gone away. All we're doing is we're now getting to a place where you do not have to have a human behind that phone or behind that support. You can have an AI and only have those humans when they need to be handed off to handle this high value interactions. So really excited. We're building all these in Element. We have a bunch of them out there in usage. JCC, Johnson Community College, they're using it for their inbound, their trunk line as well right now. We have other schools that are using. They're actually embedded as part of our AI assistants and on the website, and the voice mode is always there. So try it out if you haven't. They sound pretty good. They sound great, actually. So, and they're getting better, as we said, every single week. Like with the Sesame model, we're looking at that cutting edge technology and trying to input them into our products as well. All right, everybody. Until next time, hopefully this was useful to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.